Hello, everybody. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to NFL Thoughts. Today is going to be a different video than what we're used to doing. So, this is NFL Thoughts, obviously, so we make videos that are NFL related. So today I am making a bit of a different video just because I really wanted to make a video today. So today I'm making a video of my top 5 best defenses of all time. Starting off with the 1977 Atlanta Falcons. The Grits Blitz, basically. The 1977 Grits Blitz. Okay, the 1977 77 Atlanta Falcons. I keep on saying the Grits Blitz. Anyway, that was their nickname. They gave up 9.2 points per game, which is the fewest given up on average in an NFL season in NFL history. And it was obviously the fewest given up that year. And they also gave up only 3,242 yards of total offense, which was the second fewest given up in the NFL, only behind the Dallas Cowboys that year, who were number 1. And they were second in turnovers with 48. Now, here's the thing you need to know about the 1977 Atlanta Falcons defense. This is the only team I have on here that did not make the playoffs, let alone didn't even win the Super Bowl. And you're probably wondering, well, why do you have this defense on your top 5? You know, like, best defenses should not be, not only didn't win the Super Bowl, but they didn't even make the playoffs. Well, the thing about the 1977 Atlanta Falcons, as I said, they gave up the fewest points in NFL history, an average of 19.2 points allowed per game. And their offense averaged 12.8 points per game. And they gained only 3,246 yards of total offense. Now, the thing that kind of, has me perplexed is, the kind of thing that befuddles me is the fact that they were second in the NFL in turnovers. They did not turn the ball over that much. At least for that era, they didn't turn the ball over that much. And so basically, from what I'm being given, is that basically it wasn't exactly that they turned the ball over. They didn't turn the ball over a lot, but they couldn't move the ball either. They couldn't move the ball. And their offense was so bad, it kind of just baffles me how there were 3 teams that actually had even worse offenses than the 1977 Atlanta Falcons. Nonetheless, that's the reason why I have them on this list. Because somehow, some way, with that terrible offense, they managed to win 7 games with an offense that averaged under 13 points a game and had only 4 yards they gained only 4 more yards than their defense gave up. And they won 7 games. That is an accomplishment in of itself. So, with that being said, I have the 1977 Atlanta Falcons number 5 on my top 5 list. And it's kind of funny because it was 1977 and their record that year was 7-7. But nonetheless, let's get to my number 4. Let's get to my number 4 team that I have on the list. At number 4, I have the 1976 Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, another team that didn't win the Super Bowl. And a lot of people are I know you guys are going to say, this top 5 list is hogwash. You have the 1977 Atlanta Falcons team who didn't even make the playoffs. And you have them on the list at number 5 above so many other teams that probably did make the playoffs and won the Super Bowl. And then you got a Pittsburgh Steelers team that didn't even win the Super Bowl on this list as well. 2 of those teams. And I get it. Alright, I get it. But technically, people would not be talking about a team that didn't win the Super Bowl is on this list as well. What people would actually be talking about is, how are they only number 4? They should be number 1. And I get it. Alright? They gave up only 9.9 points per game, which is second in NFL history, only behind the 1977 Atlanta Falcons. They gave up 3,323 yards that year, which was just about around 100 yards more than the Atlanta Falcons in 1977 gave up, and they were 5th in turnovers with 46. They went 10-4 that year. They finished first in the AFC Central, and they made it to the AFC title game where they lost to the Oakland Raiders, who were first in the NFL, if I'm correct, in yards gained on offense. Nonetheless, I have the Steelers number 4 because to be the best defense, you had to have been, at least one of these, had to have been the best defense all year long. And unfortunately, they were not. Because remember, they started 1-4. And one reason, Terry Bradshaw was hurt. 2, they're the back-to-back defending Super Bowl champions. So they have an even bigger bullseye on their back. And 3, their defense gave up 110 points through those first 5 games. And I get it. They gave up only 28 in the last 9 games and an NFL record 6 shutouts. But I'm sorry. But when you have a defensive slack like that through the first 5 games, I cannot put you any higher than number 4. And these other 3 teams, they did, live up to it all season long. And nonetheless, I had to put the Pittsburgh Steelers on this list and had to put them higher than the Falcons anyway because they did make the AFC Championship game. And their defense is still well talked about today as a all-time great defense of all time. So I have them number 4 on the list, though. And at number 3, I have the 2000 Baltimore Ravens. The 2000 Baltimore Ravens went 12-4. They were second in the AFC Central behind the Tennessee Titans. They gave up 10.3 points per game, first in the NFL. They were second in yards allowed and first in takeaways with 49. And they went on and won the Super Bowl, beating the New York Giants in Super Bowl 35. And the thing is, there's a lot of people that would say that this is probably the best defense in NFL history. And for the longest of time, I said that myself. But then I had to think about it. And I thought long, and I realized something about the Baltimore Ravens is that they really played weak competition that year. I mean, really, their best competition was the Tennessee Titans, and they struggled a little bit against them. And the Miami Dolphins. Those were their best comp that they played all year long. And they lost to the Miami Dolphins. So when they did play well competition, at least in the regular season, they didn't fare too well. Now let's talk about what they did in playoff time. The Denver Broncos, highest scoring offense in the NFL. They held them to 3 points. The Tennessee Titans, a solid offense. They were the number 1 seed in the AFC. They gave up only 10 points that year in that playoff game. The Oakland Raiders, number 1 yardage offense in the NFL. They held them to 191 yards of total offense. In the Super Bowl against the New York Giants, who had a solid offense themselves with guys like Tiki Barber, they technically held them to 0 points and $152 yards of total offense. But nonetheless, I'm sorry, but I feel like their competition, especially quarterback competition, they went up against Brian Greasy and Kerry Collins during that playoff run. So I'm sorry, but I feel like they are only number 3 on my list. And now let's talk about the 2 best defenses in NFL history. The only 2 teams of the Super Bowl era to lead the league in takeaways, points, and yards allowed. And I will get to the first team, which is at number 2. I have the 1985 Chicago Bears. The 1985 Chicago Bears, they finished 15-1. Their defense gave up 12.4 points per game, first in the NFL, obviously. They were first in yards allowed, 4,135, and they were first in takeaways with 54. Add on the fact that they were first in fewest first downs allowed with only 236. And this team also was first in the league in sacks with 64, and that's because Buddy Ryan was their defensive coordinator, and they had the 46 defense. Basically, the 46 defense is kind of a replica of the Jerry Glanville Atlanta Falcons defense in 1977. The only difference is what Buddy Ryan did is he put in some overwhelming numbers. It wasn't exactly about rushing as many guys as you want, as much as it was rush as many guys as you can. And it was disguised blitzes where a guy may look like he's rushing and then he drops back in coverage and then they leave the rest of them to go beeline to the quarterback. And it confused the quarterback just as much as it confused the offensive lineman. And they could attack. And when those guys got on a roll, they were on a roll. And the only thing that stops me from, first of all, they gave up the fewest yards of total offense in Super Bowl history, 123, to the New England Patriots in a 46-10 blowout victory. They gave up a total of 10 points the entire playoffs. A shutout, 10 points. Nonetheless, the only reason why I can't make them number one on this list is because of their one loss that entire year. The Miami Dolphins beat them 38-24, and that was their worst defensive performance all year. And the only thing that could stop the 85 Bears was Dan Marino and his quick release and the Miami Dolphins 3-4 wide receiver set, spread offense. Because here's what this does. It forces your linebackers to have to cover. And here was the problem with the Chicago Bears. Their linebackers was not that good at covering. Otis Wilson, not a very good cover guy. Wilbur Marshall, not very good at covering. Mike Singletary was at least above average. But basically, the Chicago Bears were not really known for their linebackers that could cover that well. Which is why they were exposed by Dan Marino and the Miami Dolphins offense in a Week 13 matchup that gave the Chicago Bears their only loss that whole year. Nonetheless, I have the number 2 because they still are a defense that will go down in history. And now let's talk about the number 1 defense of all time, in my opinion. The 2013 Seattle Seahawks. And here is the reason why the 2013 Seattle Seahawks are number 1 in my list. And let's first of all get to the stats. They gave up an average of 14.4 points per game. They gave up only 4,378 yards of total offense, and they were first in the NFL in takeaways with 39. They were first against the pass as well. They were first in points allowed per drive, first in yards allowed per drive. Nonetheless, this is the best modern day defense of all time, especially. But they're the best defense of all time as well. Here's the reason why. Let me just go down and show you their defensive stats and show you their the number of sacks that they had on the year. They had 44, by the way. Cliff Averill led the team with 8 sacks. Only 8. And here's why. They had, Michael Bennett led the team in sacks with 8.5. And here's why. Cliff Averill had 8 sacks. Clinton McDonald had 5.5 sacks. Bobby Wagner had 5 sacks. And Chris Clemens had 4.5 sacks. It was more of a rotational pass rush that they had. And it was relentless. But more importantly, they could rush the quarterback with 4 guys and drop 7 guys into coverage. And they had the Legion of Boom, which is arguably the best secondary in NFL history with what they could do. They had Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, and Earl Thomas make the Pro Bowl. Earl Thomas and Richard Sherman were first-team All-Pros. Nonetheless, these guys were ferocious. And trust me, it was like pulling teeth when it came to scoring points. This defense was incredible. And here's the reason why I have them number 1. In the modern day of passing the football, this team was the best at being able to do it. And what they have versus what the 1985 Chicago Bears didn't have, they had linebackers that could cover. And so when you have extra people that can defend the pass and you have the ability to rush the quarterback with only 4 guys, that is a defensive recipe for success. And here's the other reason why they're number 1. The Chicago Bears had arguably the best defensive performance in Super Bowl history, but the Denver Broncos, the Seattle Seahawks played in Super Bowl 48, that was probably the best defensive performance ever assembled. They gave up 306 yards of total offense, but they also gave up only 8 points. And you're probably thinking, okay, so they gave up 8 points. The Chicago Bears gave up 10 the entire playoffs. No, here's what you don't understand. They went up against Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints in the divisional round. Drew Brees, a guy who threw for over 5,000 passing yards that year. And he went up against, okay, the 49ers, not really known for their offense. Okay, I'll give you that. Okay, I got it. But Peyton Manning, who won league MVP that year, he threw for an NFL record 55 touchdown passes. And the Denver Broncos, this is the greatest offense in NFL history. Going up against, in my opinion, the greatest defense in NFL history. They're the greatest offense in NFL history. They scored more points and gained more yards than any team in NFL history. And the Seattle Seahawks held them to 8 points. And it took them the 4th quarter before they finally scored a touchdown and scored a point. Nonetheless, you look at what they had to deal with, and the Chicago Bears giving up only 10 points to the New England Patriots. Let me just show you the New England Patriots. New England Patriots offensive statistics that year. They were 10th in points scored that year. Not bad, top 10, but when you add in the fact that they were only top 10 that year, meanwhile the Denver Broncos offense in 2013 were number 1 in NFL history. They were 9th in yards gained. This was a solid Patriots offense, but the Denver Broncos offense in 2013 was the best ever assembled. And the 2013 Seattle Seahawks gave up even fewer points than the Chicago Bears gave up in their Super Bowl against the New England Patriots. Which is why the 2013 Seattle Seahawks defense is number one, the greatest defense of all time. That is my top 5 defenses of all time. Let me know how you feel about it. That has been my time, and this is NFL Thoughts out.